Okay, good evening. My name is Harry Fisher. I'm the chair of the BET. I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation on Monday, February 24th. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. In order to accommodate the Conservation Commission meeting at 7 o'clock, we have our first is a non-routine application request for a budget adjustment, CC1, the Conservation Commission. So if you would just give us a brief outline of this. A lot of us have heard it, but I wanted everybody to have a sense of what's going on here.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. For the record, I'm Sarah Cocaro, Assistant Director of Environmental Affairs. I'm with Assistant Town Attorney Laura McGeechee. So we are here to answer questions and do appreciate your time tonight on this matter. Following a very quick overview of the HMGP and this request, there are a couple people here that I know would like to speak in support of these grants, the first selectman and two homeowners who are the grant recipients. As you know, have you heard that the Conservation Commission has been working with homeowners to educate and promote flood mitigation and adaptation while highlighting federal grant programs available through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. This work started with my predecessor, two conservation directors ago, Denise Savageau. After Superstorm Sandy, the Conservation Commission advocated and became the liaison or pass-through for 8 property elevation projects to receive federal funds, totaling just over $1 million. Denise originally submitted and was approved by FEMA for 28 applications, but only 8 made it through the process and were awarded funds. With the increase in occurrence and severity in flooding experienced in town, the Conservation Department continues to serve in this role today, dedicating a significant amount of time preparing home elevation applications and correspondence with homeowners and the state. So the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, or HMGP, provides funding to state, local, tribal, and territorial governments so they can develop hazard mitigation plans and rebuild in ways that reduces or mitigates future disaster losses in their communities. Our local hazard mitigation plan was developed by WestCog and is valid through 2026. HMGP funding is different from other FEMA funding, most notably in that it's only after a presidentially declared disaster and was historically provided at a 75-25 cost share, where 75% was covered by the federal government, 25% was covered by the homeowner, though more recently HMGP cost sharing is now at a 90-10 rate. In this program, homeowners and businesses cannot apply for a grant. A local municipality may apply for funding on their behalf. In our case, the town of Greenwich agrees to become the sub-grantee for primary residence homeowners in Greenwich, seeking funding through HMGP to elevate or to do other flood mitigation to their homes. The state, or DEMIS, becomes the grantee. They cover the terms and conditions of the grant administration. As the applicant, the town submits completed applications to the state, who then submits the application to FEMA. This is 100% pass-through funding with zero contribution from the town. I just want to repeat that. The town does not pay for any of the home elevation projects at these residencies. The homeowners hire their own contractors, they pay for the work up front, and then submit reimbursement requests. The town, as required by the grant agreement, submits quarterly reports and reimbursement requests on behalf of the homeowners. These requests go to the state, who reviews the reimbursement, and then that passes on to FEMA. Once approved by FEMA, the funds make their way back down to the state and then to the town, where the town issues a reimbursement to the homeowner. Why are we here tonight? There are 2 properties in Greenwich that researched and reached out to the Conservation Department staff with initial inquiries, as well with WestCog, the Western Council of Governments, to develop applications in 2022 and 2023 for their home elevation projects through HMGP after a presidentially declared declaration from Hurricane Ida. Both were successfully awarded in December 2024, totaling over $1 million combined. The town administers these grants through the Conservation Commission staff to provide oversight and compliance, and the homeowners are required to meet all federal, state, local laws, codes, regulations, standards, and procedures. The two projects are both single-family home elevations. One is located on Northway in Old Greenwich and another on Apple Tree Lane in Riverside. I just want to mention that this work has been going on for many, many years. I originally started this when I was the Conservation Resource Manager with the town in the Conservation Department, and still in my role today as Assistant Director of Environmental Affairs. And we've gone for these grants through the Standing Budget Resolution number 19 for the Conservation Commission. Based on prior practices, these types of FEMA disaster grants have flowed from FEMA through the state to the town and have only obtained BET approval to accept such grant funding. These grants and appropriations have always been included in the Conservation Commission budget. I'm respectfully requesting the BET accept the allocated grant funds and to authorize the first selectman or director of environmental affairs to execute the grant award agreements and any other related documents necessary to administer the grants. I do want to mention that these were awarded in December of 2024 after more than a 2-year wait from FEMA. We've been told that the award period is through February 2026 on one and April 2026 on another, with the ability to request up to 2 12-month extensions, so time is of the essence. Assistant Town Attorney Laura McGeachy and I have visited the BET Law and Budget Committees meetings both in January and February. The Law Committee voted unanimously to recommend approval at its January meeting. At the Budget Committee, members expressed concerns regarding the unknown insurance quote and the potential risk to the town. We've worked to provide updates to their questions. Regarding the town insurance, Megan D'Amato, who's the Director of Risk Management, provided a memo outlining her department efforts in obtaining an insurance quote. Gallagher and Company, which is the town's insurance brokerage firm, worked diligently to try and obtain a $1 coverage for these grants and has yet to find a carrier that is willing to insure the potential indemnification exposure. Insurance carriers that offer public entity coverages are hesitant and often not willing to offer small policies for minimal premiums. It's also very difficult to get the underwriters to fully understand why the town needs to cover such exposure, since the town of Greenwich is in a unique situation from other municipalities. We also looked at the cost of the insurance being passed on the homeowner, but because we couldn't get a quote for that, it's not applicable in this moment. There was also a suggestion about investigating holding a performance bond produced by the homeowners throughout the life of the grant. Laura, with me here tonight, can speak to that. She did a lot of research into that, and it was also not feasible. A suggestion as a potential option, if acceptable to the BET, is that all FEMA funds be held back and not paid to the homeowners until such time as each project is completed and officially closed out with FEMA and DEMIS, so there's no longer an exposure to insure or risk to the town. The Budget Committee discussed this last option at their February meeting, and Mr. Weisbrot, you asked if you could let us know if this would create a, quote, chilling effect on the accessibility of homeowners to participate in this program, having to upfront the entire cost of the project and wait for closeout at the state and federal levels. Since our meeting, Laura and I have worked, and we've sent the homeowner agreement out in advance for each of the homeowners to review and be able to comment on that concern expressed by Mr. Weisbrot and Ms. Moriarty. In speaking with one of the homeowners myself, Ms. McGeachy also spoke with another homeowner's attorney today. Both expressed that this is a hardship. The one homeowner I did speak with today indicated he would not be able to participate in this program if there was 100% holdback. Both homeowners, one with their attorney, are here tonight, as is the first selectman who would like to address the BET. We're here to answer any questions, seeing that the first selectman is here and the homeowners are here too, if you'd like to hear from them first, or if you'd like to ask questions, we're here. Thank you.
I just want to point out that this is a public meeting, not a public hearing. So customarily, we allow the first selectman to address us, but not others. But at this point, I'd like to hear from the two committees that took this up.
Did we make a motion to, so I move that we take up, did we go through the motion?
we haven't moved
CC1 for conservation for $1,053,841. It's an additional appropriation and a FEMA grant acceptance.
And I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Moriarty. Budget Committee report, please.
Yes, Sarah Cacaro and Laura McGeachy presented a second reading for acceptance of FEMA hazard mitigation grant program funds for 2 properties, $563,000 for Apple Tree Lane and $490,500 for Northway. The grants will provide 90% reimbursement for flood mitigation projects. After extensive discussion of financial protections for the town, upon the motion, the committee then voted 3-1-0 to approve receipt of the grants with a condition that reimbursement funds will be held until the Conservation Commission confirms to the BET that projects are completed and officially closed out with FEMA and DEMHS. The item was designated as non-routine, which is why we're discussing it now.
Right. Ms. Vasiliotis for the Law Committee.
Yes, Karen Fasiliotis for the Law Committee. The Law Committee reviewed the agreement. We discussed the indemnification provisions at length. Our concerns that were voiced were over assurances that the scope of the work would not exceed what is approved by FEMA. As we all know, in the past, there was an application that was approved and the homeowner ended up exceeding the scope of the work. FEMA then did their audit, and the town was on the hook for monies for reimbursement. We then had to chase down the homeowner, and we did successfully, thanks to Laura, the town attorney, recoup the monies, but it was a lot of time and effort on the part of the town. The Law Committee approved the agreement 2-0-0.
And if I may,
Yes.
I can just hand out the memo that was referenced from Megan for the benefit of all the committee members, if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's on the inability to obtain insurance.
Yes, to
Right.
obtain a premium.
Right. Mr. Camillo, would you like to speak briefly?
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, members of the BT and guests. I certainly understand the concern about the property in Old Greenwich that we had to chase down. However, this is different. Several of you up the dais live near neighborhoods or in neighborhoods that are impacted by floods. Not everybody in town could afford the upfront costs of that. Not everybody lives in a $5 million home and has money to spare. We've been working really hard at doing this, and this doesn't, as you've heard from Sarah and Laura, it's not coming out of the town's pockets. We have people here, and these are not spec houses, because I've heard that rumor being passed around. They're not spec houses. One of these houses I've been to probably a dozen times in the last 5 years. It's bad. It's bad. The water goes up into the basement, up the stairs. It's not good. And the other one is near the beach. We know there's a problem there. Westcog has also told us they identified 159 properties in Greenwich that are repetitive loss properties. And I think maybe it was David, somebody said they had a chilling effect. That would be a horrible thing to do to these people that are waiting for this. This is not a problem that they caused. And again, this is not coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. This is really a layup. I understand the concern about what happened in Old Greenwich. We're certainly on it, and again, we're very well aware of that, but this is not the same case here. This is something that these people go through every single time it rains. There's a concern that something's going to happen. If we can get this elevated and it doesn't cost the taxpayers any money, let's do it for them. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Vasiliotis?
Yeah,
And then Mr. Phelps.
one of the concerns that I think many of the BET members have are the procedures that are in place to mitigate what happened the last time around. And I know that, a lot of it requires on-site inspections to make sure that's not exceeded. Do you have, or have you established any written procedures with certain stages that will be inspected? And if not, is that something that you would be doing so that everybody's on the same page with respect to the, I think that, one of the concerns we had was there were no written procedures, that you had procedures in place, but they weren't written so that if you weren't here, somebody else would know what the procedure is. Could you just address that?
Yeah, thank you. So through FEMA and the state, that we're required to do quarterly reports, which include, as you said, a site visit and a formal write-up report. So They have deadlines for those depending on the quarter of the time of the year. So all of that is outlined within the FEMA and the state procedures for this grant award. So we're required to do that. If we miss any, we have our hands slapped, but we're held to that. As far as the grant, as far as the town side goes, all these projects are going to need wetlands or building or planning and zoning permits. And so those all have inspection reports that are with those as well. So
Well, presumably, that was occurring the last time around as well, and for some reason, we missed it. So I guess my question, though, is that, will you have like a checkoff, basically major milestones of the project, just a checkoff for the town side to assure that the scope isn't being exceeded, and that somebody is following it along to make sure that whatever plans were filed with FEMA are actually being done. I think that would go a long way to mitigate having a condition, but, I'm just throwing it out there.
yeah, so I hear what you're saying, and aside from, as I described, the quarterly reports required through this grant, as in addition to the permitting agencies, that this is something that we do as part of our job. If somebody has to change or upgrade, modify a permit through the town, that gets notified through the other permitting agencies. Everybody has to make sure that that's going to work with each of those different permitting agencies. So there's no, I can't speak to the 3 Ledge Road that was before my time. Things clearly did not go right with that compliance-wise. We have very good staff here to make sure that this is going to work just as it should.
Mr. Sells?
There we go. So, Ms. McGeechee, I thought about an alternative solution, but I'm not sure whether it's proper under the rules. Would the town be entitled, or would the town be permitted to assert a lien in the event that the homeowner had an obligation and had failed to repay? And I'm thinking about the kind of situation that we had at 3 Ledge Road, because that's a financial protection. I mean, these are, in general, valuable homes in the town of Greenwich, happily. And so I'm trying to think about mediating between not exposing the town to risk from this program and still avoiding this, delayed reimbursement. So is that something you've thought about, and would that be permissible?
I can answer that a couple of ways. First of all, and you directed the question to me, and I'm happy to answer, and I will just say that Sarah did share with me, one of the owners even suggested, is there a way to put a lien on the property as opposed to doing the 100% holdback? Number one, and in real estate, you cannot put on a lien, it's a slander of title, unless it's a statutory right judgment lien. Typically, it's a judgment lien. And I will say that I also spoke with Assistant Town Attorney Abby Wadler, who handled the initial appeals with FEMA and the initial litigation until I came on board and took over the litigation on the clawback on the Ledge Road property. And she confirmed that she looked into it. But I also know from, as being a former real estate practitioner, that you cannot put liens on title unless there's a statutory basis to do so. And in this grant program and our regulations, I don't see an avenue that provides for a lien to be placed by the town.
And there are lots of situations in which liens are granted as security interest to secure a future performance obligation. Wouldn't that qualify? I mean, I certainly understand it's not statutory, but there are all kinds of times when in commercial settings, parties will take a lien on property as security against a future obligation. That strikes me as kind of analogous.
That is under mortgages and
Yeah.
security interests
Yeah.
and UCC, which I do.
But that's what a lien
does
is.
not apply in this instance here. So I will say I can, again, do some research with a formal opinion, but I do not see an avenue to put a lien on the property in this context.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's a mortgage, right? I mean, it's a mortgage to secure a future obligation.
It's not a mortgage. We're not lending money.
Mortgages are granted all the time as security obligations independent of a loan. Oh, we can talk about this
Okay.
offline. I mean,
Yeah.
because I'm trying to find a
It's
solution to.
without doing further research, but I know that Abby Wadler had done the research, and what I know is not easy to put liens. There's not a lot of automatic triggering liens without going to court and getting a judgment lien, or getting a lien in the context of borrowing or financing.
Ms. Moriarty?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. Okay.
Yeah, the questions that you're getting are clearly to try to understand what risk the town has in this particular instance. I think as far as the program goes, it's a program that does advantage the whole town. If we have houses that are better protected, I think it's an advantage for their neighbors and for everyone else in the community. In this particular instance, the way the agreements are set up, there are protections for the town. The homeowner is indicating their commitment to follow the FEMA regulations and understands that they have to forfeit any reimbursement or any funds that they received if they do not follow those. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And the homeowners agreement, it is an absolute indemnification and hold harmless of the town. And I will tell you, you talked about written procedures or protocols. We can certainly do. I will tell you that we've had a conference call with Jim Lunny, our zoning enforcement officer, and also talking to the building department about conditioning one property is in the coastal area management, which is governed by the P and Z under CAM approval, and one is under the inland wetlands as riverine inland. And so I just know, learning from past mistakes, be as it may, that we've had multiple conversations on how the oversight, to the extent can be controlled, will be controlled, in that checking with every department at every stage and having on-site inspections.
Right, and those contracts and statements that the homeowners are signing give us legal recourse to pursue the reimbursement in the, rare case potentially that there's a problem.
Absolutely, and I will share with you that I've dug pretty deep on that 3-ledge road, because that actually predated my time. I just handled the collection litigation of it, but in reviewing all the paperwork, quarterly reports, et cetera, there was definite internal oversight, which, to be honest, there was oversight within town departments that are not going to be repeated again. And the fact that the owner did in fact sell the property after, again, I think that there are stopgap measures now from what happened previously.
And this board probably can ask you to return quarterly or semi-annually to tell us how they're going and how things are proceeding, so we can put our own procedures in place if we so like. I mean, I'd like to see this FEMA grant be accepted. I would not like to see this condition that was talked about and approved at the Budget Committee move forward, because I think it's going to be counterintuitive for the town and counterproductive to have homeowners who would otherwise be eligible for this type of grant walk away from the program. This grant program is being advertised and marketed throughout the county. I saw that there's a Stamford session being held for the public, encouraging people to be involved. And I think for this community to make these grants really unaffordable for our residents is just not in the interest of our town.
And if I may just add on, from a financing perspective, if the homeowners do not happen to have $500,000 or $600,000 cash on hand, which I'm going to hazard to guess is not the case, in order to refinance a home, there needs to be sufficient equity for that kind on a. There's all kinds of barometers with financing that might make these applicants ineligible. I'm not speaking to that, but just want to raise the specter that conventional financing may not be available And then that leads to other forms of financing, which are, interest rates are high enough conventionally. I don't know about hard money and the like, but I just wanted to add that nuance that I think it could potentially be difficult to get financing, but that's ultimately your folks' decision on how you treat this applicant.
Mr. Cowell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You just mentioned very quickly, you said today we have stopgap measures in place that we didn't have before, which led to that problem that we had in that previous example. Can you please explain what those stopgap measures are and how they would prevent us potentially from having a similar problem?
Well, I will say that we are creating them now, if you will, because of past performance. This is the first grant, I understand, that has come up since that last litigation that became an issue. And just again, I think it's the coordination between the town departments. Law department wasn't involved until FEMA was notified that they were seeking a disallowance after the fact. So I'll let Sarah speak as well, but she has a municity program, which is an internal program where the departments put notes to each other and conditioning the requisite approvals. We can't tell the building department, do not issue a CO, because if it meets state building code, technically they're compelled to. But where we can put conditions on is on the inland wetlands approval and the CAM approval, because that directly relates to flooding and relates to the purpose of these permits, which is applying for these FEMA grants. So I hope that answers your question in the back, that we are, again, trying to look at the arsenal within the town to avoid, I think, communication and being completely, so that there's no oversight. And I can tell you in speaking with Sarah, she's hyper diligent, and I do not foresee, again, we can provide further measures, written memorandums to all the various departments, but I think it comes down to conditioning the permits of approval on the regulatory agencies from the flooding perspective, on inland wetlands and on CAM.
Sorry, just to follow up, that sounds to me like we would, I guess, I'm trying to think through what you're saying, that we would not issue them a permit if they didn't execute faithfully what they're supposed to execute? Is that what you're saying? I'm not quite
yeah, I
sure
might
how
be
that
able to-
protects the town from this situation of having, liability.
So I just want to go back to what Laura said about the municity system, which is essentially a database that's used between all the permitting agencies. When you go onto this municity system and you type in an address, you're able to see the entire permit history for that property. And you can put notes in there. So it does become another way to communicate these. We only have 2 properties that are going through this. So it's not the 8 or the 28 that were done in the past. So it's a much more manageable amount. When it comes to the one property that's in a riverine setting, they have an inland wetlands application. So they know, so my department knows that any modifications to the approved permit, the approved plans, which have been already, this particular homeowner already went through the permitting process for inland wetlands. So the plans that were submitted to wetlands were what FEMA approved, right? So if anything comes and they decide to modify that, well, it has to get documented in municity, and people are gonna see that that site needs to go and make sure it has documentation that's approved through FEMA for that change. When it comes to the other coastal property, that's a CAM, so that's planning and zoning. Conservation also has a say in any type of ground disturbance for planning and zoning applications we comment on. So that too will get notified within my department that any modification to the approved plan that was approved through planning and zoning, which was approved through the FEMA, any modifications has to come back to make sure that everything is overlapping and the same.
And this, I guess, gets inspected, right? So what you're saying is, the risk is they file a plan, FEMA approves it, money gets released, but then they don't follow the plan, and what you're, that's the risk. And then an audit is done and said, hey, you didn't follow the plan, we want our money back, we got to go get it. And what you're saying is, by having this follow-on permitting procedure and inspections that go with it, that reduces that risk. Is that correct?
That reduces the risk both from the town side, doing the town permitting, but also, as I mentioned, those quarterly reports are FEMA required. So it's sort of a double check system that locally and federally, everything is working together.
And if I may just add, I made the comment before about the building department not being able to stop a CO, but they need a zoning permit sign-off and departmental sign-offs before it gets to that stage. So they would not get those departmental sign-offs prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
And can you, I'm sorry, but when you talked about that lien for a moment, I guess what you're saying is, if we don't have a case, if we don't have a position to impose a lien, we can't impose a lien until we have a position to impose a lien, right? So we have no ability to put a lien on a property if we don't have an interest there until something happens, right? But I don't quite understand why we, there's a construction going on, right? There's something happening. I don't understand why we don't have some interest or some liability relative to that construction. Because what you're talking about is actually a permitting process and an inspection process that provides protection. But if that is the case, then why don't we have an interest in that actual construction, and why can't we have some lien against that process? I don't know if that's clear. I don't know. I'm sorry.
I actually think we do have a lienable interest, because what we have is a contingent right to reimbursement if the
Right.
conditions of the grant aren't met.
Right.
It's true that we have not lent money, but it's an enforceable obligation against the homeowner, and I believe that is a lienable interest. I mean,
Right, so I'm just saying, it seems to me that maybe there's something here that we could do to get some more comfort without having to just simply put in a restriction that funds don't get released until an audit is completed, which could be years later and could wind up being a real burden to many people who couldn't afford it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Weisbrod, followed by Ms. Tarkington.
Thank you very much. The insurance, help me out on understanding, to what extent is the accessibility of FEMA funding linked to the ability of people in the coastal areas to get floodplain insurance?
So I'm trying to digest your question.
Or maybe there's no effect, I don't know.
So, yeah, you need to have flood insurance unless you don't have a mortgage, right? So the folks that can take advantage of FEMA funding have to have flood insurance. And they must, so they must maintain it for the life of the property, even if they, sell it, the next homeowners have to have it too.
But in the event that the extreme event, there was no FEMA funding and we weren't part of the program, would that adversely affect the ability of people to get floodplain insurance? I've heard that the insurers are keen on seeing the FEMA program maintained as an inducement for them to provide insurance in this district. Maybe that's not right. I don't know if that's correct. You know what I'm saying?
Ms. Tarkington. Oh, I thought you were done. I thought that was a comment.
So
It was
like
a
I said,
question.
people cannot participate in this program without having flood insurance.
Right. And does it go the other way around? Will the flood insurers underwrite this risk in the absence, theoretical absence of a FEMA program? Are they indifferent to the existence of to the existence or non-existence of a FEMA program?
I'm not sure why we're getting into.
Well, because it's a question of what the impact of this, of the FEMA program is. If it's simply 1 or 2 or 5 or 8 homeowners, that's one thing. But if it has an impact across the entire district because insurers may not be forthcoming with insurance, that is a huge difference. That's why I'm asking.
From my understanding is insurance won't cover all of the costs to help make sure that their homes are safe and fixed from a storm if they have damage. So this program provides sort of like that extra buffer to provide those opportunities to do those flood mitigation measures.
So that's a good point. So how much flood insurance coverage do each of these homeowners have in addition to this program? Is that what you're saying? That they then first call on their FEMA flood insurance, and then this program is in addition?
I'd love to, one of the homeowners particularly, I know has had multiple claims that they've had to use, so I don't know if you'd like to hear.
Can I
So-
just ask you a clarification on your question? Because this is to raise a home so they don't have a flood. They're not interchangeable.
No, but this is, my question is, do they get to call on the FEMA flood insurance for this particular thing? So rather than just having the amount of, say, $563,000, they have another $200,000 of FEMA insurance. So I'm sorry?
My understanding is that they're completely independent. In order to qualify for this FEMA grant, you have to have flood insurance to cover your home. And so then that's part of the National Flood Insurance Program. And whether they have a claim under their homeowner's or flood
No,
insurance
I
is
was only
separate
talking
and
about the
apart.
FEMA flood insurance. That was my sole question.
I don't know about FEMA flood insurance this is completely separate.
There's no FEMA flood
No,
insurance.
I'm not aware of
Sorry?
FEMA flood
There's
insurance.
no FEMA flood insurance program. There is a national
Flood insurance program,
insurance
NFIP.
program that's separate from FEMA.
And that's where underwriters write policies, and there's a national program, but the FEMA is for emergency management and mitigation, and this program's for mitigation of disasters that is after the fact.
So in this program, and these are very sizable amounts, do these homeowners have building permits already?
No, the one homeowner has gone through the wetlands agency, which is the first permitting agency that you would have to go through regardless of anything.
So, I mean, because there are homes in my neighborhood that either have chosen to elevate or not chosen to elevate, I know that the process through the building department gets complex because there's a value issue here in terms of what you can do without triggering all of that. So, again, based on some previous conversations, it gets very complex with the building department in terms of values. So that's something that we have people in my neighborhood that probably should have elevated that didn't because of that. It triggers. And so, anyway, that's just a point I wanted to ask. I do think it's important that that be explored.
Anybody else? Ms. Aurora?
Just a quick question. Can you just give some historical perspective as to how long this program, that we've been participating in this program, how many homes or residents you've helped? I don't remember that, what happened specifically. I remember big picture of the town, right? There was some risk, but was that like a one-off? Like, generally speaking, this seems to be in the interest of the resident to make sure they follow the plan. It seems to be in the interest of the town to fulfill, it just seems we're kind of like in the middle here because we're having to file the grant. But from a historical perspective, there've been like $10 million worth of grants, and then there was that one project that went over by a couple $100,000, or can you just give some historical perspective?
Yeah, so the HMGP are available after a presidentially declared disaster. The last time that this hit here in Greenwich was Superstorm Sandy. And I wasn't here for the outreach and the public education around it, but my predecessor had numerous public events talking to homeowners, sort of what Westcog is trying to do right now. And of all of the residents that were interested, 28 actually filed applications, 28 residents home in Greenwich. Because of the very strict rules with these grants where you cannot do anything more than just elevate. You're allowed 100 square feet addition, and that's usually for like stair landings or utilities that need to be elevated above the base flood elevation. A lot of homeowners back out because they go, well, I've always wanted, that sunroom or something, or that extra deck. FEMA will not cover that, and so a lot of them dropped out, 20 dropped out. So 8 made it through everything, and 7 were very successful, had no problems, except the one that we had. So it doesn't happen every year, but when it does, it's because our community really needs it.
And can you just remind me, what was the dollar number that the town was on the hook for?
I think it was around $1 million. At that point in 2010, it was a lot. They had capped it for projects were normally capped around 100, and there were 2 that went. One was around 250, and one was like 160, and the rest were 100,000.
Thank you.
Just to answer the one that went awry, that was a total of $90,000 that had to be reimbursed to the town and was.
Ms. Vasiliotis.
Yeah, Laura, I think the reason for the condition was based on the Megan D'Amato's memo, which recommends that approach because we can't get indemnification insurance. Am I correct in that, or is that? Because the way that this memo reads is that that's what she's recommending.
Well, Megan suggested, trying to come to a solution where normally for indemnification provisions, we've obtained policies for coverage. And this is turned into, due to the residential nature of the end user and the type of risk, unable to obtain coverage. So that was a potential workaround, again, trying to think where the town is most protected is the 100% holdback, but we may not have grant recipients that can take that. So
Okay,
that's
but-
what that, and I did report in order to Mr. Weisbrod's question that it would provide the utmost protection, but could have a chilling effect. So that I just wanted to
I get
review
it,
that.
and I think that's what we're struggling with right now. But the question I have is, if we can't get indemnification insurance, is what we usually do, what is the risk to the town without that insurance and without putting this in place?
Well, I will say we are able to obtain insurance. Again, it's the Safety National policy mentioned in there to provide, in order to enter the agreement, we have to provide a certificate of insurance to the state, Demis. However, that has the $1.5 million retention, so there isn't the $1 coverage. So I just wanted to first clarify that. So then again, if there is concern on any exposure, that was something that we talked to Megan, because I said we have to go back to the BET and what are the options, because it didn't seem insurance was a viable option in this particular instance. But again, this is a very unique set of circumstances regarding the indemnification and the type of program.
So, I mean, I guess the option left to us is to approve there's 2 options. Either we can condition it, to put some sort of condition on it, maybe not a full holdback or whatever, or we just accept the agreement as is without any indemnification insurance. We're just accepting the indemnification language without the insurance, other than the other certificate that we have to give.
Right, so technically indemnification insurance will be provided, but there isn't $1 coverage. So yes,
Well,
there is
yeah, I mean,
exposure.
it's
right.
basically a non-starter. I mean, why put a 1.5 million when the projects aren't 1.5 million?
No, they total,
So,
both
I mean, to
total
me,
less.
that's just wasted money.
Yeah,
We
so-
might as well not issue that insurance at all and just accept the grant as is without any guarantee that, we'll be covered. Okay.
Anybody else? Mr. Selps?
No, I respect, while I have great respect for the law department, I continue to believe that we do have a lienable interest, and the other alternative would be to accept the program without it and examine whether we can actually attach liens as a condition to the grants. But, obviously, we don't have a conclusion on that tonight, but that's kind of where my head is.
Well, I would just like to propose a condition, because I don't think we've proposed any condition, we've just removed the item.
Not yet.
But I would just like to propose a condition that we require quarterly reports be given to the BET with respect to progress and, whatever updates can be given with respect to compliance with the FEMA grant. So I guess my condition would be quarterly reports to the BET by the Conservation Commission on the FEMA grants with respect to progress, compliance, et cetera.
Question, could those be written reports?
No, I want to see
You
them
want to have?
here.
Okay,
Yes, I don't want written reports.
okay, I'll second that. Any discussion on the amendment to the motion to put a condition? Mr. Cal,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, could you please tell us, again, specify what the conditions are? Are we voting? Can you specify what those
we're
conditions are?
discussing the amendment to the
A new one,
item to
okay.
put a condition on.
The condition, instead of requiring a holdback for the entire amount, would be to require the Conservation Commission to come before the BET, not a written report, to give us a progress report, at least for the foreseeable future. And we may decide that we don't need them anymore, and we can release that condition. But at least until the program is up and running, quarterly reports to give us an update as to the progress of the application and the compliance to make sure that somebody's following it. So in other words, if there's 5 permits pulled, that, each department, whatever you want to report back, but to show that it is in compliance with the FEMA grant.
Mr. Calby, does that answer your question?
That does. We were just discussing also, you had mentioned before that you're going to have some kind of measures in place to connect the C of O or the permitting relative to compliance with following the plans that were filed with FEMA, right? So I'm just wondering if we want to put that in some way, not in terms of releasing the funds, but saying that it should be, that the release of or let's say the granting of the permit has to be tied to I don't know if this is legal, so I'm out of my lane here.
I would say they're not eligible for any reimbursement until after they get grants, so after they get permits. So I'm not sure that timely-wise that affects
Well,
the
Yeah,
procedure
I
of the
don't
project.
really think that's needed either. I think that, if this is, I'm considering this a pilot program, even though we've done this in the past, but because this is the new and improved version. And unfortunately, you homeowners are stuck in this discussion, and we appreciate your patience. But we generally get to a place where hopefully we all agree. I think that if we get just progress reports, and you can tie it to permits or whatever, however you want to do that. But, I'm looking at this as a pilot program. Let's see what's working, what's not working within the systems that we have, and then you can modify accordingly. And you might come and say, look, we thought we had this, procedure all spelled out, but we found this, that, and the other thing, so we modified the procedure. And I would really appreciate if you can write this all down into a written procedure for these grants, so that if, God forbid something happens to you, then the next person taking your place will just pick up the book and say, okay, these are the checklists, this is what I have to do.
Ms. Tarkington? No, fine. You're fine, Mr. Weisbrot?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think, Karen, your compromise or solution makes good sense. And I gather there's a motion on the floor which you, Harry, have seconded. I'm willing to,
I've moved it unless it's.
No, the amendment to it.
Oh, the
to put
amendment.
Yeah.
and
All right, unless there's any other comment, take a vote on the amendment to have quarterly reports. Mr. Alfano,
Yes.
Mr. Kalb,
Yes.
Ms. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Vasiliotis?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Selps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Mr. Alcheck?
Yes.
Unanimous, 12-0-0. Okay, is there any further discussion on CC1 before we vote on the motion as amended? Okay. Mr. Alfano?
Yes.
Mr. Kalb?
Just, again, sorry to hold it up, but I just want to clarify. So as amended means quarterly reporting, but no other conditions.
That's correct.
As imposed. I'm a yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty?
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Vasiliotis?
Yes.
Mr. Selps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Mr. Alcheck?
I'm a yes, but I also want to say I'm strongly in favor of this, but I also I believe that Mr. Selp's idea is worth pursuing in the case where a homeowner does not is not in compliance. I think we should look into whether we can put a
I think that's going to get done. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, the law committee will
Law
take
committee
that
will
up.
follow up.
Great. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, thank you all. I think this was a good outcome. I hope it's a good outcome for the homeowners. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Laura. Sorry it took longer than we hoped, but all right, we're going to move on to the assessor's report.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would love one, please.
Good evening. Always love it as room clears out. Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the BET. I'd like to present the assessor's report for February 2025. So as reported last in January, the grand list is signed and the Board of Assessment Appeals application period was from February 1st to February 20th. Sounds a little. You want me to, is it? Let's try this. This better? Yeah, okay. As of today, I will give you the best count that I possibly can. They're still working on it. But as of today, it looks like they have 85 total appeals. I think, and don't quote me on this, they have 13 commercial, 8 personal property, and 64 residential. I do not have the totals yet. We are working with them, trying to get this all organized. But it's my understanding as of this afternoon, we had 85 appeals. Last year, just for a point of reference, we had 77 appeals to the Board of Assessment Appeals, and on the grand list of 2022, we had 93. So this is definitely, it's in line with what has happened the last couple of years. I just unfortunately don't have the accurate totals for you yet. I will try to get them to you tomorrow, as soon as I can. Okay. Also, as of February 1st, the senior state and local property tax application periods commenced. The applications are due to our office by May 15th, and to date we've had about 38 seniors come in and apply so far. Upon request in my report, I put in a sales chart, couple sales charts that go back to October 2009. The one thing I want to point out to the chart that has the actual median sale price, remember on the years we do revaluation, the valuations went up, even though I'm only just marketing my median. So I was looking at this really carefully the other day, and I was like, it's a good chart to show the appreciation of property over, but there's an additional bump every time we did a revaluation. In 2015, I increased the grand list about 5% or something like that. So it's a little, it understates the overall valuation a little bit when you're comparing it from 2009 to present. But as you can see, there's definitely an increase in valuation since 2009 to present. Does anybody have any questions for me this evening?
When does the Board of Assessment Appeals complete its work?
So they are meeting on, I'm meeting with the Board of Assessment Appeals to go over certain items and to familiarize themselves with some of the properties that are appealed on March 3rd. They're going to start their hearings on March 4th. They have to finish by the end of March. They're required to finish by the end of March. So I would assume they will actually probably finish well before that.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Tarkington?
Yes, again, I will point out that for senior tax relief, the 100% value, not the 70% value, is a home valued at $2,653,000, which is, plus, it's $200. So very substantial. But Lauren, I heard on the WGCH, I believe it was Monday morning, the Greenwich Realtors commented about the month of January, and this is the median price, and they said the month of January, for the first time ever, the median price in town for residential sales was $4 million. So, question for you, is their mix of homes any different than you might do in the department, and do you have any comment on this?
So when we calculate the actual assessed value of the median, we base it upon the median sale price that has occurred. We take the entire year. I'm assuming, the problem right now that we're seeing, and we're seeing this not just here in the town of Greenwich, there's just very limited inventory of houses for sale. It should be interesting to see what happens this spring if we get, if the inventory starts to kick up and we see activity again. I would imagine after we have an entire year of sales, we'll probably be somewhere around where we've been in the four, probably increase a bit from the 2.7 that we've been at, the assessed value being 1.8. I would imagine next year, based on this year, but also got to remember next year we're going through a revaluation too, so that creates a whole different problem for trying to figure this out. But that being said, I'd be surprised if an entire year of sales show the median sale price at $4 million. If that's the case, I might have to think about finding another job. I'll be the last assessor here.
Yeah, Mr. Cobb?
Just a quick question. Can you tell me why why is vacant land going up so much in value? What's the story there?
So we don't really have a lot of vacant land sales. And how we actually calculate land, so what we have to do sometimes is we have to take land that has sold where they tear down a house. So that has all sorts of issues for us. And it basically it creates a kind of distortion of land value, because there's going to be a certain point where you're going to buy a house and you're not going to tear the house down because you don't have enough FAR. In other words, it's not economically feasible to tear a house down to build another house that's only 1,600 square feet. So there's a sweet spot in all the zoning wherever it is you are. And that's why land valuation gets a little tricky here in this town, because we're looking at not only first of all, there's just very few parcels. We do have some, but very few vacant land sales to begin with. And then when we are looking at, houses which have been torn down, there's also some value in the utilities that are already there. So it's a little bit more complicated, and that's why our land values.
Sorry, there was an assessment or something, or was there what sparked the 39% increase here?
Where are you?
Vacant land, assessors comparison table, 24 over 23.
On the grand list totals.
Yes. I mean, it's not, well, it's not that big compared to what, residential and commercial properties are. I was just wondering why we had that big bump up, if there was anything to account for it.
Usually that means that we had a subdivision filed. So in 2023, we had only 257 parcels, then we had 265. I'm pretty sure that was a subdivision that was filed. So out of one big piece became 4 or 5 or 10, okay?
So, okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody else?
No,
Mr.
it's been
Target?
moved that we accept the assessor's report?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Tarkenton, seconded by Ms. Moriarty to accept the assessor's report. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, it's 12-0-0. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now take up the item 4 on the agenda, request for budget adjustments, which are routine applications, which I will read. Excuse me, PB1 probate court, $15,000 for an additional appropriation for office services. PW8 DPW, $500,000 release of conditions related to the Glenville Center Neighborhood Improvement Plan. PD3 Police, $61,874, approval to use 911 funds for overtime. And FD3 Fire, $537,500, release of conditions related to overtime.
So I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by myself and seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Is there any objection to unanimous consent?
May I make a comment rather than an objection?
Sure.
I believe that FD3 fire is $637,500.
Oh, I think you're right.
And we asked at Budget Committee for that correction to be made. That was the actual amount of the condition. And I believe that is how we approved it in the Budget Committee. So I
I
wanted
think
to
you're right.
make that correction.
Okay, any objection to approving the routine items as corrected? Seeing no objection, that's 12-0-0. Okay, we move to the Comptroller's report. Mr. Minarski.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, BET members. The highlight of the Comptroller's report is obviously the budget process, which we're all very busy on. And I'd just like to correct one error here. Under the second topic, annual budget process, the last line, the first paragraph, actually consolidation day is tomorrow. And decision day in 1 and 2 is next week, March 4th and 5th, so I apologize. So that's the highlight of the Comptroller's report, and then it looks like we're finishing the audit to be released and distributed by the end of the week, this week. So I'll open it up to any questions anybody might have.
Yeah, Ms. Tarkington.
This is more just a comment, for the annual budget process, just a huge thank you to you and to Roland Geiger, our budget director, and Samantha Longo, who've been really doing a tremendous amount of work during this period, and we appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, Ms. Moriarty.
So, and this may be a topic of discussion at the audit committee, so you can refer me to that. But you talked about the grants audit for DPW, and there are 2 projects that are not included in that, but they'll be reconciled among department members. Is that because the audit didn't include that in scope, or they needed to be addressed differently?
I'm sorry, where are you at, the first bullet?
Page 2, yeah, first bullet on the grants audit for DPW, right?
I missed the question.
So the question is, the last sentence in that paragraph, you refer specifically to 2 major bridge projects which are not included in the audit. Was that the audit scope was originally designed, not including them, or
It was.
what's the reason?
Correct.
there?
It was not part of the audit with CLA, but it's part of the audit with RSM,
Okay.
which should be reported next month when they come before the audit committee.
And so I have a question on risk management now, on the proceeds that we're getting for Engine 51 claim. Does the $180,000 cover the town's entire cost for That or there is a...
No, that's just
there's a
simply the
deductible.
two tow charges.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so we're out of, there's out-of-pocket cost for the town for that particular incident. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Darkington?
I move that we accept the controller's report.
It's been moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Moriarty, to accept the controller's report. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's accepted 1200. The treasurer's report,
Okay,
please.
again, I don't have any comments to offer, so I present to you the January Treasury Report for your vote for acceptance.
Any questions on the treasurer's report? Seeing none,
I'll move that we accept the treasurer's report.
I'll second.
it's been moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Moriarty, to accept the treasurer's report. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's 1200. Thank you, Pete. Okay, we now move down to old business. Discussion and possible vote on the following items. First is the amendment of the Greenwich Retirement Board charter, or the amendment proposed by the Greenwich Retirement Board to the charter in regard to retiree hiring, I guess it would say. So we've had a whole lot of discussions along the way. We have a memo from Mary Pepe about this. Is there any further discussion tonight? Seeing none? I'll move that we approve the amendment to the charter related to the Greenwich Retirement Board proposal in regard to retiree hiring.
Second.
Mr. Kalb seconds. So I'll move to a vote. I'll go the reverse order this time. Mr. Olczak,
Yes, I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Deschamps,
Yes.
Mr. Selps.
You forgot.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Aurora.
Yes.
Mr. Selps.
Now I'm a yes.
No?
No,
say
now
yeah.
I'm a yes.
You're a yes. Ms. Fascidelis.
I'm a no.
I'm a yes. Ms. Tarkington.
I am a yes.
Ms. Moriarty.
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod.
Yes.
Ms. Jansen.
Yes.
Mr. Kalb.
Yes.
Mr. Alfano.
Yes.
So that passes 11-1-0. Okay, we'll move on to the annual report 2023-24. This is the second read on this. Samantha told me that she had not received any more input on this. So I would like to move approval. Do we approve or accept?
They're the same by Robert's rules, but accept is probably more
I think
appropriate here.
I move we accept the annual report for 23-24.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's 1200. On Green Skies, I had a discussion with the law department today with Abby Wadler. This is on the RTM agenda, as you might have noticed if you've read your agenda, your call. I've actually requested that the law department give us an opinion as to whether or not it's necessary or advisable for the BET to vote on this matter. So I'm proposing that we put this off. By then, we will know what the RTM does. I don't think it endangers anything, but Ms. Moriarty.
That's my concern, is that it further delays this project. I think that we've been told about the favorable contract provisions in there, and that any delay could either eliminate the potential grant or even the reimbursement rates. And I don't want to see any further delay. How can we as a board move forward in indicating our thoughts about this without delaying the project. We may individually have different ideas on whether it is subject to our jurisdiction or not. I think it's totally appropriate to have discussed the item with the First Selectman's office and the town administrator. But at this point, to delay it another month, because we've already delayed it 3 months now, for a question that we haven't gotten an answer for. I don't know how many times we've asked, but I think it's not prudent.
Ms. Tarkington.
At the Budget Committee, this was, lengthy discussion, and I believe that the outcome was that this is a financial decision. And so, just asking the Law Department is not satisfactory. I would also ask if the Law Committee has reviewed the document with the exhibits as presented, and, both the purchase and the PPA, and if they're satisfied with the areas such as indemnification. The reason it's going to the RTM is only because of the indemnification, and the decision has been made to use insurance. And since this is, if it goes with a PPA, it's 20 years of insurance. I'd like to understand more the issues in this and why the BET wouldn't need to approve that also. The indemnification, I think there are many other issues. This project, while we saw an analysis, we don't see the terminal values or any of the requirements to buy out. And finally, there are some comments about ownership, which I don't think were correct. I do think that this needs further review, and perhaps that review can be done, as Mr. Fisher has commented, within the next month.
Any other discussion? Yep, Mr. Deschamps.
Yeah, I sent around a summary of the financial elements of this agreement at the request of the chair of the BET here. And as I cited it in my February 14th email to all of you, the largest risk as I see it is the movement to the negative for the town and for the taxpayers for the rate that we're getting, which is a pretty attractive rate. And so my concern in this delay, while I understand, the concept behind it from a parliamentary perspective, I do want to make sure my colleagues have read and understand the risks that we're facing with delay. I didn't get any comments back, by the way, from my email at all from anyone on the dais tonight, and so I sent that out. I guess it was 10 days ago, and I would also say that we've had numerous meetings on this now. The chair of the Budget Committee, Ms. Tarkington, has been in meetings with myself and Mr. Alchek at her request. We've met twice. We had our Titan Energy consultants also on the call. We've had EMAC review this agreement as well. And while there may be some open questions with respect to indemnification or exhibits or some legal elements, which I can appreciate, I would think that it would be incumbent on the town and the town attorneys to resolve those issues. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we're supporting this contract from a cost production perspective. And I did look at, and I'll just mention quickly, at the current rates from the non-residential renewable energy solution contracts are well north of 9 cents per kilowatt hour. This is a very attractive program for the town. I mentioned in my mail, for those who hadn't had a chance to read it, that the Cohen energy load is estimated at 375,000 kilowatts per year, and the solar system will generate 278,000 kilowatts per year, which is 75% of the load at a very attractive rate. So, my concern, and I'll say it one more time, is that if we continue to wait, we'll lose this contract and we won't get the pricing that we have in there now. And there's been a lot of discussion around it. I think it's been fairly vetted, at least with the responsibilities of this group. And if it doesn't require a vote, then we ought to give indication that we support the solar project for the town to sign the contract, let Fred and Kate sign it. And if we think it needs a vote, let's take one tonight.
So,
Wait, Mr. Alchek, your hand, yeah, I thought I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. I actually have a question, and maybe it's Mr. Deschamps that can answer it. At what point are we at risk of losing the 6.7 per kilowatt hour rate? How much longer do we have, and how quickly do we have to move?
Oh, sure, please.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one I asked of the town administrator, and the answer is we don't know. So like any contract, as all of you know, you're at risk until you sign it. So we don't know if that price will move, even if the administrator goes to execute it tonight, tomorrow. They're subject to changing the provisions up until execution. So the answer is we don't know. We're at risk until we sign the contract.
Ms. Tarkenton.
So I think that when we talked with our consultant, he did say that we had, some months this year. I want to point out that people really need to understand termination, fair market value. If we terminate this in the first year, we have to pay the higher of fair market value or early termination of $712,000 for a project that we could buy for, I'm not sure what the number is, $517,000. Year two, it's 641, and even by, it goes down. We don't get below the higher of, at least there's a written termination value, year four, and, when it's dropping down. So I below the amount we could purchase. I do think that there are issues here. I think we need to understand the insurance and the cost of insurance. We've never indemnified a private entity before, and what is the cost of 20 years of insurance for this? I also think there are many questions. It is true that we did meet twice, and then, my colleague wrote a memo without ever saying he was doing that or
I take great exception to that, Ms. Tarkenton. Great exception to that.
No,
I don't understand at all, with all due respect to you, why you would tonight say that to me after what we talked about. That is extremely disrespectful to me. And Ms. Tarkenton, you are way out of line, and I am deeply offended by what you said. I sent an email to this body to educate at the request of the chair, and by the way, yourself, who've also asked me to opine on this as the EMAC liaison, which I did, and now you're sitting there saying I didn't give you a heads up about an email that I sent out? I mean, really?
So anyway, I thank you, but I do think there are things that need to be explored. I would suggest that the law committee needs to look at it. I am not prepared to pay a higher rate for 20-year financing for this. I understand the lower rate. I do support the solar, but I do believe that there are issues here that need to be raised. Again, this is going before the RTM. I don't understand the insurance policy for that period of time. I think that should be explained to the full board. I do think that there's issues that need to be raised, and I think that the law committee should meet and review all the attached.
This is getting repetitive.
Well, no, and then I would also say the maintenance agreement. One of the things that we all, when we met, was our consultant said, you really need to stay on top of the maintenance. And I think a review of the maintenance agreement is appropriate. And I'm also confused because I thought the maintenance agreement went with the purchase, but apparently it also goes with the PPA.
You are confused. You're confused as to the contract mechanics. You're confused as to the GASB accounting and the capital leasing. You're confused as to how this contract operates. It's been explained to you numerous times over a number of meetings and include a very succinct and clear email from me to this body, with which you responded to none of the questions and the issues that were raised, zero of them. And tonight you sit here and you go on with a litany of reasons why we shouldn't sign this contract, which is not in the best interest of taxpayers, not in the best interest of the Cohen Center, and you've insulted me in the process, which I find offensive given I've done this work at the behest of the chair of this committee, Mr. Fisher, and your own request, by the way, which you've neglected to mention, and I did it in a way that was in the best interest of this body.
All right. Ms. Moriarty.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the Green Skies contract and arrangement.
I'll second that.
Mr. Alcheck, second?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Moriarty, seconded by Mr. Alcheck.
Can I mean,
Yeah, we can have further discussion. So, Ms. Aurora.
I'm just trying to understand what are we actually debating? Are we debating whether we want to do a PPA versus purchase? Are those the two sides of the argument, or are we actually debating the PPA? Because the actual purchasing, right? Because if we do a PPA, then we own the assets. I'm just trying to understand what is our real risk, right? Like, because the asset's sitting in our building, right? Ms. Tarkington, so I'm trying to understand what just stepping back a little bit and trying to understand what the fundamental concern is, because you're explaining this as a financing. I'm seeing this as a 20-year contractual obligation to buy electricity at an attractive rate, right? Where the asset is sitting on our building, right? So why would we not, what's our real risk? I'm trying to understand.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yeah.
try to keep it short, please.
The asset is actually owned by some other party.
No, but it's on
and
our building,
mortgaged.
sorry. Yeah, it's on our building, right? So
Correct. But if we
they break
wanted-
the contract, just talk this out, because I don't want, there's no reason to be partisan on this. Let's just try and understand what's going on. The solar panels are on the Cohen building. We are contractually being obligating ourselves to buy electricity at 6.7 versus 15 or 16 or 9 cents, whatever the market is today. If Green Size, let's say, rescinds or they go under, or some, even though we have their audited financials, the asset still sits on our building, right? So we can, yes, we have to figure out where else we're going to get electricity, but it's no different than where we were before if we have to go buy it from the open market, right? So I'm just trying to understand what your concern is on the 20-year financing, or why you're calling it financing. It's not financing, it's a contractual obligation.
No, actually, Mr. Selps called it a synthetic debt in the Budget Committee meeting. So it's 20 years of a debt structure.
Well, I think, Leslie, so the reason it's technically a debt is because it's an obligation that we owe, right?
Right.
So, but we are getting electricity, right?
Correct.
And on the
But-
flip.
But there are buy options. There's ways, there's already names of parties that it's being transferred to, et cetera, et cetera. And I did ask for the financial statements for those two other parties. We have not, that are documented in these documents. We have not received the audited financial statements for them yet. There's, the company itself has been transferred more than one time since we've been looking at this. These are the kind of things I would explore before I would.
Are you principally in agreement with the PPA? Are we principally in agreement with that? I just want to understand, are we trying to push a different model?
Quite frankly, there's an investment tax credit. I would, I am certainly in support of moving forward on this transaction with Green Skies. But I would recommend a purchase rather than a PPA.
Okay, so that's what I thought you were suggesting, and I would say that purchase is absolutely not the way to go about doing this for the town. The town should have no business owning panels or maintaining them. That's just not our core business. I've gone about this on different projects, but 100% not on solar. I think we voted on this on, the car solar ramp we had once or something like that. So I just want to I agree with, because I have looked at this on a different personal matter, on a private matter, and the 6.7 cents is very attractive, right? So the fear we have is that if we principally agree that we want to do a PPA, then this is a pretty good deal that's in front of us. If we are here to want to debate PPA versus, I'm happy to, if people need more time to think this through, to think about this, but if the idea is to just push it forward to debate purchase versus PPA, I'm not willing to do that. Right? But I am willing to think about it further if you need more information. But I do agree that we should probably give an indication that we are supportive of a PPA and that this is a very attractive rate to lock in if we can do so.
Mr. Selps.
Yeah, I just want to respond to a couple of points Ms. Aurora raised. And one of the things we heard at Law Committee was that this agreement, which was, we have not seen all the attachments, but as Ms. Fasliotis and I did both look at this agreement for at least 3 or 4 times. And one of the things we were told is, and I know this is true because of our continuing involvement in this has been negotiated over a period of time. Before Kate was here, her predecessor was also involved in the negotiations. The negotiations have run for roughly 2 years, I want to say. And one of the staff attorneys within the law department basically said to us, a lot of the concerns that Ms. Tarkington raised got raised Some of them we got told no on. But what we were told, and we were given a fairly high level of assurance, was this is a reasonable commercial agreement, and this, on this terms, meaning the PPA as opposed to the purchase, this is where we're gonna land on this. And so, I wanted to say that in response to Ms. Aurora, because it's not as if we're, starting with a fresh piece of paper here. This is an agreement that has been negotiated at some length with a lot of people on the town side looking at this over a long period of time.
Mr. Weisbrod.
Yeah, so, right, so what's before us is simply, the town administrator and the previous town administrator negotiated as part of their responsibilities a PPA. There may have been some time along the way where they were thinking of a purchase and so forth, but at the end of the day, their judgment was that because of the extremely attractive rate involved in the PPA, this was the most attractive thing to do. So the only issue then was, did they need to bring it before the BET? And really out of an abundance of, let's be transparent, let's show, we all remember the Greenwich Plaza transaction that was ambiguous as to whether it needed to come before the BET, and they did. And as a result of that, some major changes were introduced because of things that came out in the discussion at the BET. So they came here. Now, the result of all this is, and I think Harry would agree because he and I have had conversations, this is an attractive contract. There's just no way, I'm convinced it's a very attractive, as Nisha just said, it makes all the sense in the world for the town of Greenwich to enter into this PPA agreement. The analysis has been done. Mr. Deschamps circulated it to all of us. I've had the opportunity to talk to others on the committee that worked on this, and I'm more than persuaded that this is an extremely attractive financial contract for the town. The issue of whether a formal vote is needed or not, I'm prepared to give a vote and say yes, but we need to signal to the RTM, which is reviewing this, that there are no obstacles here and that the BET is comfortable with this transaction. However we wish to do that, I'm inclined to just vote, yes, this is a good transaction. In the future, do we always need to vote on every contract that the town administrator negotiates? That's a different matter. But since this one has a little bit of legacy, a little bit of history, in order to facilitate this and to get it going and get it resolved at this current RTM where it's on the call, I would like to move forward and have a vote. I don't think, Harry, you have any objections to the transaction itself. You and I have talked about this, and I think you're comfortable with it as well.
Mr. Alcheck.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. As you may know, I've had a lot of experience financing big power projects, from Washington Public Power to both municipal as well as private, like Boston Edison, Commonwealth Edison. I've financed tens of billions of dollars in this market. I agree with Ms. Aurora's way of looking at this. I think that the pertinent issue here is we've got a really good rate on offer, 6.7 cents a kilowatt hour versus an avoided cost in excess of 20 cents. I mean, everybody gets their electric bill. You know what your electric rates are. They're in excess of 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So where I may disagree with Ms. Aurora is that I would not dismiss the idea of looking at buying this for another project in the future. I think the thing that we really get, the deciding factor for me is, in this case, we really learn on how to maintain this system, which is something, frankly, if we're being critical, we haven't done. The town hasn't done a good job at in several cases previously. So in this case, we will have Green Skies who will be looking after the maintenance of this system. They have an enormous amount of pressure on them to deliver the electricity, because if they don't, they're not going to get a return on their investment. So they have a lot of incentive. The The incentive is to deliver electricity to us, and the demand for electricity far exceeds the supply available from the solar array. So I think, again, I agree with Ms. Aurora. I think that she's characterized this properly, and that the risk here is, hey, we may lose this very favorable offer at 6.7 cents a kilowatt hour.
Ms. Vasiliotis.
Well, I don't know how much of a risk we have, but I just have a question through the chair to Mr. Chomp, because he seems to be very knowledgeable in this. Is one question raised by Ms. Tarkington was the termination clause, where we would be on the hook for more than what the asset is worth. Is that typical in these agreements?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
I think, yeah, there's 3 or 4 different buyout years that we can purchase the equipment if we choose to do so. I mentioned that in my email to you on February 14th. That's actually an embedded call option of value to the town for numerous reasons. But also the purchase price would be a function of the net present value of the future energy savings,
Yeah, I
and
get
then the
that
equipment
part.
itself. Yeah, so that's how there's, NPV math that would be determined, because now, if you bought it now, which I didn't recommend in my PPA versus purchase analysis, for several reasons. One is it's a capital outlay of over $500,000, and the second is that the ITC credit would be at risk. It would be our risk relative to Green Sky's risk through the PPA. And if you do the math, the net differential between the two, purchase versus PPA, with the ITC taken out, is essentially nothing. So we're better off financing this through the PPA and not owning the equipment outright, as was mentioned previously. And then the purchase price math is just simply NPV math that you see in those different dates.
I'm not advocating a purchase of this because I'm.
Yeah, I know you weren't, but the chair of the budget committee was, and the math doesn't make sense.
What we don't do well in this town, and I'm echoing kind of what Mr. Alchek said, is that we're not on the cutting edge of a lot of this stuff. And where we failed, for example, in Glenville, we're not doing the maintenance of it when we bought it outright. So, again, I'm looking at this as a win for the town, but also I don't want the town to be responsible for the maintenance, because I don't think we do that well.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and that's been discussed numerous times in EMAC. The Green Skies contract, as you may know, has an O&M agreement embedded in it, but that would also be the O&M contract that you would use in purchases. Again, I mentioned that in my email to everyone. So in either case, I think the town recognizes, it seems to me anyway, that they would need service assistance from an outside vendor to do that. And then the Green Skies contract, I think, should be something that should be considered. We have CMS coming up also, as this body might know. You approved, prior to my joining this board, the purchase of solar panels as part of the $112 million in the CMS building. So that's already in their budget. And again, and it was mentioned earlier, I would also caution this board to when we look at CMS, it's a case-by-case basis. How we purchase things or how we PPA them are a function of the math associated with each of those projects. And in the case of CMS, it may make sense to purchase those panels for the reason I just said, which is, A, it's already in the budget, meaning this body already allocated the money for that, which is close to $3 million. And second, it's a school that could be producing solar energy over the summer when the school is not being utilized, and therefore there may be a more profitable mechanism for solar panels on CMS because of that. And so we have to do that work, and I've asked the CMS liaison, not our BET one, but the CMS EMAC liaison, to provide the necessary mathematics and the solar array work to do that. And I'm going to work with Mr. Fisher on that as our BET liaison to make sure that math makes sense for that particular project, which is a big one.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Also, I also want to I just want to thank the chair of the BET, Mr. Fisher. He asked me as the EMAC liaison for this body to do the work that I provided you. He asked me to do that work, and I did that work as he requested, and I did it to the best of my ability to provide clear and concise information for a very busy group of people so they could understand the pros and cons for the PPA relative to the purchase, and that's exactly what I provided all of you. And that is how I think this board should operate. And without any other nonsense. And what I'm hearing tonight is very disappointing from a certain member of this committee, where all of a sudden there's all these questions, and I just want to make sure that the public knows that the chair of the BET, Mr. Fisher, has gone about this in a way that I think is consistent with how this board should operate.
Ms. Tarkenton, do you have something new?
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask Mr. Minarski about the insurance policy. This is the first time, to the best of my knowledge, that we've used an insurance policy in lieu of indemnification, or to be, do we have any views on that? Was this reviewed by you, with Megan? This is setting a precedent. Again, it's the first time we've ever done something like that. And it surprises me that this is not being discussed by the board. What is going before the RTM is not the agreement itself. This agreement is now would be now done with the vote of this board, but rather it's solely the indemnification and using the insurance for it. So I just think that we need to make sure we understand the various aspects of what is involved as we move forward with this. Again, I support the solar panels.
I just wanted something new from you, so you gave us something new.
Okay.
Let's not repeat. Ms. Moriarty?
I just want to make clear that by making the motion that I did, I hope I'm not setting a precedent. That's not my intent, but I think this particular issue has languished now for 3 months, and I'm concerned about timing, and it is on the RTM call, so I think it's important that this body show whether it supports the transaction or not. This is a purchase agreement. I think our administrator and our other town departments negotiate contracts all the time that we aren't a party of. So by making the motion, I'm not opining that we should be approving these kinds of agreements, but I think it's important to get this matter moving forward.
Could I characterize the motion as to the BET supports the use of a PPA for solar panels on the Cohen Eastern Greenwich Civic Center? Would that be an acceptable wording for the motion?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay.
I did say contract, but it's really approving the concept of the
Supporting
transaction.
the use of a PPA for the use of solar panels on the Cohen Center. Okay, that's acceptable. All right. Any further?
Elliot seconded it. Do you agree? You're okay
Do you
with that?
agree to that? I agree. Okay. So we'll vote on that. Start with Mr. Alfano,
Yes.
Mr. Kalb,
Yes.
Ms. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkenton.
No.
I'm a yes. Ms. Vasiliotis,
Yes.
Mr. Selps.
Yes.
Ms. Aurora,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps,
Yes.
and Mr. Olczak.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's 11-1-0. Okay, thank you. Next up is new business. Looking for approval of the zoning enforcement table of our organization request to move a part-time position to full-time. May I have a motion to do that?
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Moriarty motions to approve that, and a second? Anybody want a second? Mr. Weisbrod seconds. Could I have a report of the HR committee, please?
Yes, the HR committee had this before us twice. The first time, there was a little bit of a miscommunication. We thought it was going to be wrapped up into the fiscal '26 budget. However, after the meeting, it was explained that there was an individual that was retiring as a part-timer, and they wanted to proceed with trying to fill the position as soon as possible with a full-timer. We went back and forth asking whether or not there were efficiencies within the department that would allow them to continue with the current TOO, if you will. And the feeling was that they needed this person because they couldn't find people that would serve in a part-time capacity. The committee agreed to fill the position, but we requested that the town administrator find an offset of the .71 that we were adding to the TOO. I did get correspondence from the town administrator today saying that she could not find any offsets, but the committee approved it 4-0-0.
Okay, there is no financial impact of this on the current year budget, so the Budget Committee did not take it up. Is there any?
I want to say there is a financial impact, but the department is able
Oh,
to
I'm sorry.
absorb the costs within their current budget.
That's a correction which I accept. Thank you. Any discussion on this? Ms. Moriarty?
I just want to ask a clarification because the cover sheet that's included in our packet, we have the TOO motion that's on the floor too, but should be a separate transfer of funds. I don't know if it's all within 100, but the 15,000 isn't directly identified.
It's all within the 100s. When the original form came before you, they were funding the entire salary of $90-some thousand, of which 75 is coming from temporary into there. But we only have 3-4 months to go, so everything's going to be within 100s. We don't need any transfer.
But just to clarify, only because I thought I recall hearing a comment that there was some money from supplies or something that might need to be moved. That's in the 200s. So there's new information?
No, the original one assumed we were budgeting the entire $95,000 annual
But they would need
salary,
it.
so that we needed 75 from the temporaries and then the balance from
All right.
the
And
other
so
accounts. But
just to
there's-
be clear, the department head has the ability to move money within the 100s and therefore can be covered if it's in a salary line versus temporary. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, I think we'll take a vote on this. Mr. Alfano?
Yes.
Mr. Kalb?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty?
Yes.
Ms. Tarkinen?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Vasiliotis?
Yes.
Mr. Selps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
And Mr. Olczak?
Yes.
Okay, 12-0-0. Thank you, Patrick, for showing up, even though we didn't need you.
It's only been 5 years, right?
Okay, we'll move on to item 12, the approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion or corrections to the minutes? Mr. Selps moves to approve.
Second.
Ms. Vasiliotis seconds. Is there any objection to unanimous consent for all three? Wait a minute, discussion, Ms. Tarkington?
Yeah, maybe I missed it, but I didn't, last Friday at least, when I got the package, I didn't see the January 28th minutes. Are they available? Did I just miss those?
They're in the packet.
Oh, they're in the packet. Well, maybe they weren't in the packet when I got the packet. If they're there, I mean, it's fine. I have no issue.
Okay, yeah.
2 cents.
Okay. Any objection to unanimous consent to approving the three sets of minutes? Seeing none, that's approved 12-0-0. Thank you. My only comment on the,
Oh,
excuse me.
actually, I wasn't at the meeting, so can I vote?
Yes, you can still vote.
You can.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to review it.
Yeah. The only thing on the chair report is you might have seen in the news today, the first selectman has moved ahead with his Hamel task force. And as chair of the BET, I'm asked to appoint someone to it. And I'm appointing Matt Deschamps to be the BET representative to the task force. I don't have,
Great.
I have no other comments. Motion to adjourn? Okay, I'll
Motion
move it
made.
to adjourn. Mr. Alfano seconds, and it's unanimous at 8:16.